Welcome to the Michigan Small Business Development Center's presentation on Small Business Big Threat, your next level understanding of cybersecurity and cyber risks. My name is John Hine. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Trivalent Group, an IT and cloud services provider based in Grand Rapids, and the primary developer of this presentation. Security is a little more complicated than the days of these relics. I'm eager to share this information with you in the hopes that it will inspire you to action in your organization and help you become a safer cyber citizen. Let's get started. Small Business Big Threat, your next level understanding of the realities of cyber risk and the need for cybersecurity. Our agenda today and the expected take-home pay is going to be that review some cybersecurity concepts. Some of you may be completely new to this, some of you might be grizzled veterans, but we're going to review a number of different concepts. We'll go over some scenarios and examples of things that have happened and things that could happen. We're going to test your knowledge. This is an audience participation webinar, and we're going to have you get involved along the way, and then there'll be some review and some action items and some homework assignments for you to take out of this as well. I like to hit this right away because if you remember nothing else from the time you're going to spend on this webinar, and remember this, that security is not convenient. I came up with this years ago when it was a lot easier than it is today, but it really is super true today. Security is not convenient. The longer passwords, the locking our screens, the awareness that we need to have has become so prevalent today that it's never been more true than it is now. The other thing I'll share with you is that if you implement every measure in this presentation, you could still be impacted. Sorry. If you neglect to implement what's in this presentation, you will be impacted. So, not maybe the greatest of options that you see there, but I want to share the truth with you.
I will visit suspicious websites. Gambling.
Pornography. BitTorrents.
It's a free country.
If I want to hog all the company bandwidth by visiting dangerous websites, I'll do it.
Let freedom ring.
FreeStreamingMovies.com. FreeLicenseCodes.com.
FreeNuclearCodes.com. www.I'mAboutToGetArrested.com.
I just ended up on a watch list.gov.
ExpensiveLawsuit.com/we're all going to prison. The web is so fun.
So I enjoyed that video. I hope you did as well. And I ask my audiences often, if there was a particular person that they identified with or someone that reminded them of someone that they know. Of course, they never identify with them, or at least never admit that to me in person when we're doing this presentation, but good for a laugh anyways. So we're going to meet some distinguished guests as part of our presentation today. And these are some personas that the SBDC has developed to kind of help us identify with and learn from as we go through this content. And first, we're going to meet Ashley, and I hope none of you can identify with her because she's a black hat hacker. And as the name might imply, she's not a good person. She's not nice. And she says that most small businesses think that they're too small to be a target and don't protect themselves. If you did not take the assessment, thank you. Your business will be on my radar to hack. Next, we have Marco, and he's a coffee shop owner. And he says, businesses like mine offer free Wi-Fi to customers, and I recently learned how risky that can be. The assessment is a great tool to learn how to keep your network secure. Third is Jeff, and he's a hardware manufacturer, and he says, as we grow, we continue to implement new systems and procedures to protect our business and customers from cyber attacks. I hope the experiences shared throughout the assessment help you protect your business. And then we have Sally, and she's a plumber, and she says that we may only have 5 employees, but that didn't stop the hackers from targeting us. In the assessment, I shared several best practices I learned after our database was hacked. The assessment they're talking about is at the smallbizbigthreat.com website, and there's a self-assessment. It's not that long, and it's certainly not hard. And I would just strongly encourage you to go through there and answer those questions to the best of your ability, and it will give you a great indicator of your security posture and what you can do to improve it if needed. Okay, so I get asked often, why is this such an issue now? And I say, well, there's a lot of game changers out there. And if you think about it, our society has evolved to where we are always connected. Our devices in our home are online. Our video games are online. Everything we do, short of maybe brushing our teeth, is online. So we're always connected, and that increases in windows of opportunity.
We have a very IT-centric business and society, right? Our business, whether we're in manufacturing or we're a law firm or whatever we are, we have a heavy reliance on technology. And so that creates an increase in business targets. And then we have this new class system by tech skills, if you will, where the technologies become much more convenient. As I showed you on slide number 2, security is not convenient. So this increase in convenience has increased adoption and involvement by people that maybe are not trained or used to implementing technology. So human error becomes part of the equation, and these have all contributed to a roughly 660% increase in cyber attacks. Think about that number for a minute. 660. And that number is not going to slow down anytime soon. Now, contrary to what you might feel, this is not merely a domestic issue. This is a global problem. And as you can see from the pie chart, in the United States, we certainly have maybe what you would see as more than our share of targeting from cyber attacks. But really, this gets into a variety of countries, like AO, for example, is Angola. And you might think, well, why is a small country like Angola on this chart? And you know what? They export oil. They have a lucrative industry that fuels their GDP, and they're into oil. And so that makes them a target because finances, as you'll see in a moment, are still a primary motivator for cyber attacks. Now, what's going to come up here in a moment is a real-time map, global map, of cyber attacks in progress. And this is kind of just mesmerizing. If you're old enough to remember war games, this kind of reminds me of that. But the crazy thing about this, and this is from a company called Checkpoint, they make security appliances, is right now, for example, no, the world is not waging war on Spain. That's not what's happening. What you're seeing here is a case of systems that have been compromised in these other countries around the world that have been commandeered, if you will, to levy some sort of a cyber attack against some kind of systems in Spain. So this is typically not governments waging war. These are rarely just, not people sitting at keyboards waging war. These are systems going against systems. In some cases, there's some testing and simulations, if you will. But most of this is actual attacks. And this is really just the attacks that are easy to detect. So you see that there's millions of attacks that occur every day, and this is just the ones that are easy to detect. So look at this. Look at how many systems are being directed to attack something in Thailand right now, from across the globe. And so it's just staggering, and you can easily sit and watch this for quite a bit of time and be mesmerized by what all is going on. So it goes to show you how global of an issue this really is. The next question you might have logically then is, well, gosh, with all that activity, what does that cost per year? And I will let you take a moment to guess to yourself. What does it cost? Let's start with the United States alone. Domestically, breaches cost around $100 billion with a B, dollars in the U.S. So your guess for globally then would be 3 times that, $300 billion globally. So just staggering costs when you stop and think about it. Now, attacks, where do they come from? Well, the vast majority come from outside your organization. So a Verizon report issued in 2016 shows that external, and that's the blue shaded part there, represents the majority of incidences, breaches that are lodged from outside your organization. So still a significant threat coming from within, but external is always first. And then I'd mentioned a moment ago that financial motivation is still the primary driver for cyber attacks. And you can see the blue line here on this graph on the right, and that shows where by quite a wide margin that financial motivation and gain is still what drives a lot of the cyber activity that occurs. So money is and has always been the primary motivator for attacks. Up to 89% really are fueled by money or espionage. Now, when it's not money, it's usually some kind of a social or political driver. And so if you see the face there and that looks kind of familiar in a generic kind of way, a lot is written and reported on the news more and more about the group called Anonymous. And that is, for lack of a better term, a group of hacktivists. So hacktivism, blending the word hacker with activist, is the act of hacking or breaking into a system for a politically or socially motivated purpose. So we actually saw an example of this in the mainstream about a year ago after the Paris attacks, when the group Anonymous waged cyber warfare on ISIS. So they got involved in the war on terror. Usually groups like Anonymous or other hacktivists are waging a different form of war on whether it's an individual they feel is deserving of such treatment, or a company or a government, and they kind of operate on their own. So a little bit of a free agent out there, and that makes them a little bit of a risk in most cases. Now on the local level, we have some great tools available to us to kind of see that this is still a very widespread issue, even on the national local scale. So the Better Business Bureau, the BBB, has a wonderful tool called a scam search. And in this case, I did a filter for just identity theft, online purchase, phishing, the good old Nigerian prince foreign money exchange scam, spyware, and tech support. And I ran it for July of 15 to July of 16. And you can see here this heat map where, yeah, you know what, the hot spots tend to align with your major league or NFL sized cities. But even if you're in central Montana, northern Minnesota, or southern New Mexico, you still need to be concerned about this. This is a very democratic layout of activity. And it goes to show you that even if you're in a less dense area, respective to the population that you have, there's still scams for you to be aware of. And when we're conducting business online, then geographic boundaries tend to have no meaning. So our manufacturer, Jeff, stops by and says, I'm glad I remembered to search the BBB website before I opened the email I was suspicious of. So what a great idea to use this website to search for scams that might trigger what you just got in an email. Oh yeah, this email is trying to get me to enter my password for whatever, and you can search the scams and see if it's out there. So we're going to start with a major topic called social engineering. And, you might stop and say, well, John, this is a cybersecurity webinar. And yes, that's true, it is. But as I'm going to show you, a lot of the cyber attacks that occur are only a little bit about the technology and more about the human behavior that lets the technology compromise their environment. So, by definition, social engineering is the use of manipulation using psychology to coerce one into giving up information. And to start with, we're going to go with phishing. Now, no rod and reel here. This is phishing with a PH. And that's those false emails, chats, or websites designed to impersonate real systems with the goal of capturing sensitive data. So most of us by now have received one of these emails, or maybe you haven't, you don't know it. But it's those emails that try and get you to do something for someone that's not who they appear to be. Now, it's evolved. So now there's spear phishing, which is the same concept as the phishing emails, but this appears to be from someone that you know. They're very legitimate in appearance, and so it's really, really hard to determine when it's a spear phishing attack. We then have impersonation or tailgating. This could be that literally like someone impersonating a contractor or a handyman or a worker of some kind to get access to a restricted area. And then finally we have baiting. So we've all received those emails where, hey, update your profile and get this, or take this survey and get a gift card, whatever it happens to be. Those are often ways to, seduce someone into providing information that they shouldn't. So, 4 main areas of social engineering. Now, Marco visits here and he says, phishing got me last week. It was a message from my supplier asking me to update my password. Okay, coffee shop owner, seems reasonable. But what we find out is that was Ashley. She says, that was me, the black hat hacker. People forget hackers have jobs too, easy places to practice. Right, so I ask my audiences often, visualize for a moment, when you think hacker, what do you see? And most people, it's someone in a dimly lit room or apartment with a hoodie on, and that's, it's a case of dimly lit, sunglasses on, 3 monitors at the keyboard, and they're trying to determine, how much stuff they can hack. Well, you know what? Most hackers have an 8-to-5 job. You could be working with them. So, in that case, it's a matter of knowing that someone may be that hacker. So now we're going to talk about best practices. And I call this the umbrella topic because really the entire presentation could speak to this. But we're going to spend some time covering some minimum best practices. So to start with, backing up data. Now, I gave this presentation a while back, and I had about 50 people in the audience. And when I asked people to raise their hands, how many people back up your data every day, I had only about a third of the room raise their hand. And I kind of threw a fit. I took my jacket off and was jumping up and down. And this is really important, folks, because some of the cyber attacks that you might get will really force you to have to be able to restore your data. You can't restore it if you don't have it backed up. So in this day and age, with the technology available and the affordability of it, you should be able to back up your data every day automatically. Your data should be able to get off site automatically. Now, people say, oh, I back up to a hard drive, then I unplug it and I put it in my backpack and I take it home every day. Look, that's better than nothing, but put some automation in it. Take yourself out of the equation. Secondly, for a lot of you small business owners, maybe you're kind of in the startup phase or really young in your business, you didn't want to incur the expense of a IT professional to set up your technology, so maybe you try to do it yourself, or the neighbor kid is pretty slick with technology, so you had them do it. It's gotten to the point now where if something's not set up quite right, or a checkbox is not checked that should be, or something like that, it can be the difference between surviving an attack or not being affected by an attack, or being completely affected. So that's not an area to cut a corner. Immunize. Your antivirus software should be on every system, every device that you use, and it should be updated continually. And then finally, credentials. Longer the better, and we're going to actually have a very specific slide on that in a moment. So you heard me say the term malware, and you may not have heard that term before. Malware, what is that? Well, it's malicious software, malware. So malware is basically software. It's designed to let a hacker gain control over a computer or device. In some cases, it may be pretty obvious that you have malware because your computer is exhibiting symptoms, but oftentimes it's just lying dormant until someone takes control of it to levy an attack against Thailand, or whatever happens. We saw that on the map a few slides ago. It's usually installed by a virus or by connecting to a network that's infected, like a Wi-Fi connection. It may not act like a virus, may erase or corrupt files. It can also send information about your computer or device anytime it's connected. So it's important to note that it's not always obvious that you have it. Now, to really break down malware, there's really the common forms of it that we're seeing nowadays, and I found this little caricature to give us a visual here, but the primary category name is ransomware. Now, aliases of this are CryptoLocker, CryptoWall, Locky, KeyRanger, and TeslaCrypt. Those are all different forms of pretty much the same thing. The MO, it locks and encrypts files and then deletes them until payment is made. So you may have seen news reports over the last year and a half or so where hospital systems or companies or even local governments had ransomware, and they had to pay literally a ransom to get their data freed back up. And it's kind of crazy because in a sense there is an honor among thieves, is that if the ransom is paid, the data is usually made back available to its owner. Mainly because the perpetrators want to create an ecosystem where people pay the ransom. Now, it's important, getting back to my point about your data backup, is that if you have a good backup, you may be able just to restore your data pre-infection and then not have to pay the ransom. So just a little affirmation there for getting your backup working and working every day. But this is by far the most common form of compromise that the industry is dealing with in this day. Another non-technology measure that I want to emphasize to you is a policy, and literally like a piece of paper policy. Acceptable use policy, or an AUP, is what kind of protects your business by establishing the boundaries on how your employees use their business technology. If you have a rogue employee that uses the laptop that you provided them to conduct malicious behavior, you could be liable. So having an acceptable use policy is a simple and quick measure to give yourself some risk protection. Here's a screenshot of one from the SANS Institute. It's a great one. I believe there's a link for it on the smallbizbigthreat.com website. It's free. Do it. Just make it happen. And so Marco stops by and asks the question, I'm a 5-employee coffee shop. Do I really need to do this? I would say yes. Congratulations, you're only 5 users. Probably take you 15 minutes to get this done for your entire company, so get it done. Take this important step. It's easy, it's quick, and it gives you a huge measure of legal protection. So a little opportunity for you to participate, and I can't see you or hear you, so I'm going to go on the honor system here. A little game called Myth or Fact. Myth or Fact. So let's start with this. Users of the Apple or Mac platform are impervious to cyber attacks. Okay, now, just you and me here. I know who you are. You use an iPhone. You have a MacBook. You kind of ignore all the articles and the news reports about the cyber attacks because you've not been infected yet. You're thinking, those poor people that use Windows or Android phones or whatever it happens to be. Well, I'm here to tell you that that is a myth. So while it's true that the Apple platform has far fewer issues, there is a sharp increase in the number of pieces of malware or compromises of that platform. So in fact, the Key Ranger that I just mentioned a couple of slides ago is targeted towards the Mac platform. So be aware of that. And now let's do a short quiz. Question, why is cybersecurity such a concern these days? I gave you that first early in the presentation. This is A, there are more rotten people in society today. So some of you cynics out there might want to choose that one. B, we're always connected. C, being a hacker is cool. Well, of course it is. And D, both A and B. Give you a second. And of course, you are saying to yourself, it's B, John, because we're always connected. True. Second quiz, how might malware end up installed on your computer? A, you open an email attachment, nothing seemed to happen. B, your computer seems slower than it used to be. C, you took a survey from a website that offered a gift card for doing so. Or D, all the above. And of course, immediately coming to mind for you is D. D. Okay, password best practices. Password best practices. Length. Question for you is this. Give you a second to mouth it to yourself, to think about it. How long, minimum, should a password be? That answer has changed dramatically just in the last 5 years. How many of you think it's 8 or 10 characters? Maybe even 12? How about 16? How about 16? In fact, there are some advocates out there for even longer than that. But let's say for today it's 16. You're thinking, why? Why would it be that long? Well, look, hacking passwords is not about a person sitting there guessing the name of your cat, the name of your car, where you're from, your address, your birthday, that kind of stuff. It's usually a technology-based algorithm that is trying to brute force crack your password. And so it's literally mathematical permutations. So the more characters creates the more permutations. And then when you add complexity into it, upper and lowercase letters, which are seen as unique, symbols and numbers, that creates even more permutations. So you need to have complexity in your passwords as well. Now, I stop here because I tell people this and they go, John, I don't even know any words in the English language that are 16 characters. Well, I don't think I do either, but here's what you do. You create a passphrase, a statement that you can remember, and you borrow letters and characters from that passphrase to build your password or passphrase that you'll use. So whether you take a sentence, it's always sunny on Mondays in November 2016, and you borrow letters from each of those words and you form, a phrase that gets to 16 characters, and you can kind of remember that. Now, once you've done that, you can't come up with a clever password or passphrase and then use that for all of your logins, all your websites and your network and all that kind of. You have to have uniqueness, separate credentials. Now you're thinking, okay, so now you've forced me into this box. How am I supposed to remember all of that? Well, I would say you need to use a program that's made for keeping credentials. They're oftentimes called password managers, password wallets, password safes. and I'll give you a recommendation or two on the next slide. But these are encrypted and they have apps for your phone. You can access them from a computer, and it's just the safest way to store your passwords. Now, if you have to share a password, ideally you use a temporary password that once you issue it to someone, they use it once, it expires, and it can't be reused. Next best thing, you could text it, but don't email, don't broadcast it in any way. Now, I had to actually upgrade the security at my company, and our employees had gotten used to, maybe shorter passwords and not changed as often. And so I had to, kind of bring this practice into our company as well. And there was some mild revolt, and you're gonna have that because, as I told you early on, security is not convenient. And so all of a sudden, as a form of protest, people were sending me, passwords when it was time to set new ones, and said, John is a jerk 2016 ! Blah blah blah, and they were having some fun at my expense because I made them change their passwords. So you can have some fun with it too. So safekeeping. Here's a couple programs that are pretty widely used to store safely your credentials. Now, these can help you create strong passwords. They have password generators. They have apps for your phone. You can access them from a computer. You can securely share. Gives you a little analysis. I need to kind of make you aware, though, that just recently the program LastPass actually was compromised, because I get asked that question. Well, if I put all my stuff in there, what if that's compromised? Well, okay, that's a possibility. That can happen. But it's still the lesser of the evils compared to sticky notes and whatever else might happen. So Dashlane is a good one that can use, but there's others out there as well. But find the one that works for you and use it. So let's talk about physical security.
All other security. Make sure to lock up or lock down your devices before you leave them. Our neighborhood-friendly hacker Steve shows us that once an intruder physically has your device, they can take as much time as they want to break your passwords or other security. Always have a clean desk policy. What this means is, never leave vital documents sitting at your desk while you are not there. It can easily be picked up by anyone, including the janitorial staff or our neighborhood-friendly hacker Steve. Looks like he's back again. Lock it up. Locked. It looks like Steve's back again, and there's nothing for him to grab. Make sure to shred all vital documents. Use a crosscut or confetti cut shredder, better than the one we're using, or use the shredding services provided by your company. Always watch out for shoulder surfers. What this means is, make sure someone's not watching you type your password. Jackpot! Never ever post your passwords. It may help you to remember them, but when you think you've locked your computer, it's very easy for someone to break into it. Watch out for people trying to piggyback on your secure access. Because once they get in, you now know what they are capable of.
Okay, so not a real high budget production there, but I think it does a good job in its kind of cheeky way of reinforcing how human behavior on the physical security side of things can really impact your cybersecurity posture. So I look at it this way: it's really almost equal parts of the equation. The physical security, the people that are involved, and your cybersecurity all work in tandem. So as you saw in the video, poor physical security can certainly undermine your cybersecurity. He could have had the longest password in the world, but if it was on a post-it note on his desk, then it didn't really matter. So certainly our physical security informs our cybersecurity, right? We've learned to lock our doors and our windows, our homes and stuff like that. So it informs that mentality towards cybersecurity. And then finally, it can improve our cybersecurity, certainly if we have good physical security. So now our poor person with a propeller hat there is probably about to become an ex-employee, rightfully so. And many of us as business owners have been in the position where maybe an employee needs to be removed from the organization. So what do you do there from a cyber standpoint? Well, first of all, you need to have all of the passwords in the organization change. And you might be asking, well, why all? I'm just talking about one person. Well, what I find is that most businesses, except very, very disciplined ones, larger ones perhaps, there's usually been some password sharing that's occurred, intentionally or unintentionally. So to be as safe as possible, make sure that you have all passwords changed for all users. You certainly want to disable the user account of the individual that is leaving, so that they can't use that account to log in. And then if you have any confusion or ambiguity at all on how to do that, then get help. Get help. The next kind of macro topic here is really mobility. And as you see in the subtitle there, risk no longer has boundaries. Security has to be the same. So of all those game changers I mentioned to you at the beginning, you think about the power that is in our palm of our hand on our smartphones or our tablets, whatever it is, and it's really an eye-opener for what can be accomplished. So let's start kind of working with the public Wi-Fi. At this point, it's become so prevalent. It's not just coffee shops. We could be getting our, we could be getting new tires. You could be in a mall. You can be wherever, and you expect there to be Wi-Fi everywhere, right? I mean, think about it. If you admit it, you are disappointed because your expectations were not met if you're in a place of business and there's not public Wi-Fi. So, knowing that, you need to be aware of that's not the place to do things of high value. Okay, don't be managing your investments or paying your bills or whatever else from a public Wi-Fi hotspot. Personal protection. No, I'm not talking about gun laws. I'm talking about a firewall. Make sure that your computer or your device has a firewall function enabled and running on it. And then finally, stay secure. If you do have to connect to your workplace or some other kind of sensitive data, use what's called a VPN, Virtual Private Network, which gives you some semblance of a secure channel to which to communicate. So our visit here from Ashley, our black hat hacker, and she thinks that public Wi-Fi hotspots are target-rich environments, punctuated by her evil laugh. Bwahaha. Now, social media is a large part of the mobility discussion, right? But social media is not just for teenagers and personal use anymore. Social media has become, for many small businesses, their digital presence. So let's look at this. The same rules apply, all right? You want your credentials to be complex, have the right length, that kind of thing. Only share what's necessary. We all have that Facebook friend, maybe it's a relative, who overshares, right? Same thing in the business setting. If you're using social media to market your business, only share what's necessary. Remember, these apps are on your phone. I mean, it wasn't so long ago that if I wanted to cause reputation damage or impact the digital persona of a company, I needed to hack their website. And to do that, I needed to be able to get to their web server and hack the web server. Then I needed to kind of know the programming language of the website, and I had to have all this layers of expertise. Well, if I wanted to affect the digital reputation of a company now that's using Facebook as their primary digital presence, I just need the credentials. The app's already on my phone. So a few swipes of the finger and a few taps to change some text, and voila, the damage is done. So it's important to know that that power exists, and certainly you want to update and review your content frequently so that if something does go awry, you know sooner than later. So let's talk about buying and selling. A lot of you in your businesses buy and sell online. What you're seeing here is a somewhat real-time dashboard of dollars spent or dollars sold in both online and offline, so brick and mortar. And it still surprises me the gap between online and offline. So offline far outpaces online still, and I guess given that it's McDonald's and stuff like that, that'll be the case. However, look at the tally though. We're talking about $10,000 a second of online spend. Okay, $10,000 a second, real money, real money. So if you buy and sell online, let's look at buying first. Look for the lock. Most browsers, your internet browsers, will display a padlock on the address bar or the bottom status bar to indicate you're in a secure session. Very important. In conjunction with that, you'll oftentimes in the web address see an HTTPS as in secure. And then make sure that you're using known trusted sites. Those, you oftentimes maybe you're searching for something to buy and you find a price that's just so much better, but the website's kind of iffy and you're not quite sure if you can trust it. Make sure that you stick in the light, stick in the known good. If you're selling, encrypt. All your transactions must be conducted securely. Okay, if you don't know how to do that, make sure you're using proven technology from the merchant provider, your bank, credit card provider, whatever it happens to be, that you can conduct secure and safe transactions. If you do have to store information, credit card payment information as an example, you only need to store what's necessary, and it has to be encrypted. And we'll cover that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. Now, Sally's stopping by to say I've actually called the company before I decided to do online business with them and check the BBB. Okay, so play the scenario out. You go to Google, you search for whatever widget you want to buy, you find a website that has it 20% cheaper than everywhere else, and you go there and the website's a little sketchy. Maybe you can only find a PO box. I'm not quite sure if this is legit. Reviews are hard to come by. Go to the Better Business Bureau. It's a national organization. Look up that company. Make sure you find out what their reputation is. If you can find a phone number, a lot of times you can't, but if you do, call it. Do they answer the phone? Are they legitimate? So do that vetting. Save yourself the potential heartache of a bad experience. Now, while we're talking about selling, if you do sell online and you do accept credit cards, you need to be PCI compliant, and that's the PCI as in payment card industry. So PCI compliant is if you accept credit card payments online or over the phone, you must abide by various regulations. Now, for most small businesses, this means completing a self-assessment, and this will be done on a roughly 12 to 18 month rhythm. And there's a link below to give you more information and resources if you need that, but make sure you do not overlook these requirements and regulations. Okay, time for you to participate once again. So myth or fact? Say, John, you've sufficiently scared me. I'm going to run for the hills, and this whole online thing, I'm done with that. I'm just not going to be on the internet. So I'm safe, right? Okay, stop laughing. It's a myth. It's a myth. So while statistically safer, you're still at risk from internal malice. Think about that physical security video, that high value, high budget production. Physical security can still be breached. All right. So speaking of breaches, the primary mission is to really avoid it, right? But what if the primary mission fails? A breach does occur. Let's kind of delve into that. You've been compromised. What do? Disconnect and lock down your systems. Now, notice I did not say turn off. If you turn off your systems, you are likely to lose the ability to forensically investigate what happened. So disconnect. You're trying to stop the spread of a disease. So disconnect your systems that are compromised so they don't spread issues anywhere else. Lock down your systems. Within 24 hours, you really have an ethical responsibility to inform all affected parties, including customers, They should be made aware if any of their information has been compromised. Okay, this could be vendors, could be customers, the community, whatever it happens to be for what your situation is. You need to make sure that you have informed them of what's going on. And then as soon as possible, and this might seem just overly obvious, but as soon as possible, you need to resolve the situation and resume operation. And you're thinking, well, John, that's kind of obvious. But I'm going to give you some data here shortly that underscores how important that really is, to the point where I needed to put it back in here. So my question for you is, do you know what an hour of downtime costs you in your business? If you don't, that's okay, I hear that a lot, but you should. You should. Maybe you're just a super small business, but you know what? It doesn't take much per hour to become a really relevant and important situation, right? So let's look at Sally. She stops by and says, even though I'm a small plumbing business, I learned it cost me $500 an hour to be down. $500. Okay, so that's what, $4,000 a day? It's $20,000 a week. That's real money. That's a lot of money. So it can add up quickly, and being down for a week is no stretch, not at all. So a lot of companies that we know and maybe love and have heard of have been compromised, right? Targets, Citi, Sony, Yahoo. They've all been in the news over the last few years. What can we learn from them and their response? Well, first of all, you need to own it. Be accountable. Acknowledge that it happened to the people I mentioned before, your customers, the community, your vendors, whatever it is. Accept responsibility and then fix it, and fix it fast, right? So I know I'm restating the point. Fix it and fix it fast. Prevent it. Make it so that it can't happen again, or that it's as unlikely as possible to happen again, because the statistics do not favor your business's survival otherwise. I'll give you the data in just a moment to prove that out. So let's do a quick quiz. What are some indicators that you are using a secure browser session? Is it A, there's a lock in my browser address field? Is it B, the website address starts with HTTPS? Is it C, I have my monitor turned so no one can see my screen? Or D, both A and B? I know, you're chuckling over C, but of course the answer is D, both A and B. Second question, what is a task that you should not do while using public Wi-Fi? Should not do. A, pay your bills. B, mess around on Facebook. C, read the news. Or D, email. What should you not do public Wi-Fi? Of course, it's A, right? Nothing of value. Scenarios. Some real world or real world like situations of things that can or have happened. So the first one's malware. All right. If you get infection warnings from programs that you don't have or you don't remember installing, that's an issue. So there's a common, there's a program, I forget the exact name, Anti-Spyware Pro 1.20, whatever it is. If you don't remember installing that program and it tells you that you're infected and it says click next to repair, it's not repairing anything, it's making it worse. So infection warnings from programs you don't have. Slow browsing. Now, if you're watching this and you're under the age of about 40, 45 on the outside, you have no idea what either of these two devices are, perhaps. Certainly the beige one, which that's a modem, and that's how we used to get online before there was an internet, actually. The black thing there, that's an actual phone that you had to dial. So I always get some chuckles in the audience when I show this picture, because some people don't recognize what either of these things are. Redirected web browsing. If your browser takes you to places that you did not indicate it should go, that's a yellow flag as well. And then pop-up messages. Some websites, maybe it's ESPN.com, will have a sponsor or paid advertising pop-up, but that's it. After that, it shouldn't happen. And so if those continue to pop up, that's another indicator. Phishing email. I shared with you early on under social engineering that this is still far and away the most common point of entry for malware to make it into your environment. So this is an actual phishing email. It went to a colleague of mine that worked at a Fortune 200 company, 7-figure IT budget, IT staff of well over 100. So really, substantial resources at their disposal. This made it through. Let's look at it. I want you to remember, be suspicious. But let's look at the tells. Subject and sender. Now, I want you to look at this at the sender, right? sysadmin at itsecuritygroup.com. What I want you to kind of get in your mind programmed is that is so generic, it's obvious. It's so generic, it's obvious. So it may look legit, but it really is just too generic. Second, there's oftentimes some supposed authority, right? So in this case, it's an act of Congress. Now, in conjunction with the next tell, asking for your password, this one makes me chuckle because an email that asks for a password is enough of a concern. An email that asks for all of your passwords, click on this link and test the strength of all of your passwords, should make you fall out of your chair. Total, loud sirens going off. This is bad news. And then finally, if you're a nitpicker for spelling and grammar, congratulations, you have a talent that will help you. So in this case, is there really a hyphen in cooperation? Technically not. So you want to nitpick those kind of things because most organizations that are legit are not going to put out grammatically incorrect messages. And what you need to be aware of is that there are services out there, say in Eastern Europe as an example, where malware creators with intentions to compromise systems and steal your information can go and rent the services of either native English speakers or very well-trained English speakers to translate messages to read well, to be correct. So they're getting better at making these messages sound legit and read legit. So raising the game, so to speak. Physical security scenarios in the office. Maybe it's time for a bio break. I want you to think lock before loo. Lock your screen before you go to the restroom. Now, there's a little bit of a good-natured shaming ritual that we do here, where if I find someone whose screen is unlocked when I walk by and they're not at their workspace, I will change their wallpaper, their background on their computer to something that they know, obviously it's not what they had, so that they know that they have been visited. And so that's kind of a step one process. So lock your screen. It may even make sense to lock your office door too if you have one, okay? So whatever is appropriate for your organization, but consider that. Coffee shop. It only takes a second, a refill, a restroom break. So the story I'll share with you here is that my daughter, this was a few years ago, her high school handed out Chromebook laptops to all the students. And just to make the story a little bit more interesting, the school bought the Chromebooks, all 300 of them, from my company. And so they hand out the Chromebooks to every student and say, here, the school is providing this to you, but if it's lost or stolen, then your parents have to replace it. So what does a 16-year-old do with this newfound mobility to do their homework from wherever they want? They go to Starbucks. So she does that. We're in week 1 of her having the Chromebook, and I get home from work and I see this dejected teenager who then proceeds to admit to me that she went to Starbucks and went to the restroom, and she swears she wasn't even gone for 2 minutes, came back out and the Chromebook was gone. Week 1. So I had to replace the Chromebook that my company had just sold the school like 2 weeks beforehand, and it was my kid that was the first one to lose it. So a little funny moment in the irony there, but the point being, it only takes a second. And then certainly in your home, your technology is your high value targets there as well, okay? So here's Ashley, and she said, I had a heyday with someone's computer that they left unlocked at the office last week. Remember, your typical hacker has an 8 to 5. You may already know them. Another form of scam is an online scam, kind of a wire fraud. And there's a lot of forms of this, and they're becoming more and more prevalent. But basically where maybe you're asked to wire or transfer money. In this case, there's a real estate scam that occurred in the highlights here, but basically it's the typical send me money, I'm stuck at this location, that kind of thing. So I think at this point most of you may have heard or seen about that. They're on the rise. And then another scenario is called a wireless deauthentication attack. And that's where an attacker basically kind of intercepts the signal from a wireless network and prevents someone from using it. Oftentimes that's done as a nuisance. But as you can see in the example here, there's cases where it's been used in collusion and malpractice as well. Now, a real scenario that happened that I was directly involved in that I want to share with you, and it happened at a school district in Michigan. It was a client of ours, and they started to call us on a daily basis and said our network just is so slow. It was happening a couple times a day, and they had no awareness or understanding as to why. So we helped them with troubleshooting, and we did the investigation. We started to kind of find out that they were being victimized by what's called a denial of service attack, or distributed denial of service attack. And if you're watching the news in late October, you know that a lot of your favorite big websites, Twitter and Amazon and all these, were taken down because of a denial of service attack. And it's basically a flood of traffic that attacks a network, and just by its sheer volume brings that network down. So after all the investigation, we learned that it was a single 16-year-old student using his phone to initiate this attack. So here's kind of how it went. Brought his phone in, he connected to the school network, and he got an IP address. And if you don't know what an IP address is, not overly important, just think of it like a house number, unique number. Took that IP address, went to one of his cool hacker websites, of which there's countless, put the address in, pressed enter, and walked away. Not even a minute and a half. Within minutes, the school network started to slow to a crawl and eventually became unusable. Now, I don't show you this to impress you with the technical acumen of this 16-year-old kid. What I want to impress upon you is that we got this kid, the school management authorities brought him into a computer lab. The local police were involved, so they were there. And then myself and a colleague came as well. We were wearing suits that day. We did not identify ourselves to the student, and we found out from his Twitter account later that he thought that my colleague and I were FBI agents, which was very, very cool. We did not change his mind there. So here's this kid with school leadership, the police, and what he thinks is the FBI all watching over his shoulder. And you would think that he would have been at least nervous, if not out and out scared to death. And he was none of that. He was cocky. He was haughty. He was braggadocious. He was proud. Totally disconnected from the gravity of what he was involved in and the trouble he was in. That to me was the unsettling aspect of everything, is this, his detachment from the seriousness of his actions. So I share that with you to make you aware that that's what we're dealing with these cyber attacks. So here's the realities for small business. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller said, there's only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be. Again, I'm really not trying to make your day cloudy, but those are the realities. So how do we extend out as long as possible the will be ones, right? So here's some stats to show you why you're the targets. Now, according to Symantec, nearly half of all cyber attacks are now levied against small businesses. Nearly half. So if you think you're not a target because you're small, that's flawed thinking now. I told you a couple times how important it is to get your company back up and running. And here's why. Here's the statistics to show that. 60% of companies that are breached never recover. An attack can set a small business back anywhere from 54 to 188,000 per incident. Okay. Now I do a lot of consulting in the business continuity realm as well, and it doesn't matter whether it's a fire, a tornado, or a cyber attack. If you do not have countermeasures in place, if you don't have a plan in place to get your business operation back and running as fast as possible, the data shows that between 60 and 80% of those businesses will not be around within 3 years. It's very, very sobering. So I can't impress upon you strongly enough to make sure that you're prepared. So what should you do now? Well, first of all, further your education. And if you hung in there for this whole webinar today, you started that process. You should be a lot more educated now than you were a short time ago. Assess your situation, go back, kind of get an IT audit, understand, what needs to happen, what's the gap between where you are today and where you need to be, and then address those gaps, improve your situation. The Michigan Small Business Development Center has built a great resource in that smallbizbigthreat.com website. The resources, the information that are out there are tremendously helpful, usable for businesses of all shapes and sizes. So take advantage of that resource and do it today. You won't regret it.
I hope you found this information understandable and informative. Cybersecurity is an expansive topic and constantly changing. Always keep learning. Use this as your starting point. Best of success to you this year and the years ahead.